Now that Kamala can finally be unburdened by what has been, what do you think she did wrong with her campaign?
I don't think it's just Kamala. I think it's what the Democratic Party did wrong, which was offer us no other option. They waited until basically Biden was no longer at all a viable option, and then they just forced Kamala upon us rather than starting at the DNC, which they still had time to do, provide a new candidate, and everyone just threw their support behind Kamala. And to be fair, I didn't like her at all. I wasn't rearing for her to win as the first woman president because I don't agree with her policies. She didn't run a good campaign from the get.
I personally think that the Democratic Party just did not listen to, the people and just use common sense.
Hey, welcome back to the Only Lawsuits podcast. I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
I'm Farah.
All right, so today is a very, very special episode, the post-election episode. This is what's on everyone's mind, the election, Trump and Harris. So, Mike, get us started.
The train came through last night, dude. Trump train. He swept, and I love election night. I started watching the election soon as I got home. Polls started closing around I think 7 here in Florida, and I'm a day of voter, right? I like to go and see. I like drama. I like the tension. I like to see, look at who's in line and see who they think I'm voting for versus who I think they're voting for, and low key see if we get into a fight. In my head, I think who will win, and then I like to look at the poll workers and see how close they are to death. So
This is a lot more involved than I was expecting.
Well, yeah, this is what goes on in my head when I go to vote. But yeah, my poll worker dude was literally on the borderline of death. I had to read my ID to him, and because he couldn't read it. But hey, I voted.
Look, shout out to the poll workers out there dealing with people like him. But I had a great experience. I mean, I was in line for about 45 minutes. I went in the morning, and it was a mostly streamlined experience. Everyone was kind of jovial. It is kind of fun to people watch to see, who is that person voting for? Who do I think that, where do they stand on the issues, but I'm a day of voter myself.
Did you vote in person or did you vote?
I voted in person, but I do early voting, and I'm just in and out. I was done in less than 20 minutes.
Yeah, there's no fun in that.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I like seeing is the poll voters or the people that come who are super patriotic. There was a lady in a full red suit that she was just I was like, this lady's ready to do her civic duty.
I know who you're voting for.
But yeah, man, Trump won, as we all can see. And I think the great thing about the Trump or this election, right, was the message that got sent, I believe, through last night's election. Number one, I believe he's projected to have a landslide victory with all the battleground states. Mm-hmm. He took Florida, which we all knew Florida was going red, just from how we've been leaning. And then I was really surprised with the margins in Georgia. So in Georgia, that's where I really started to notice when I watch CNN. I love CNN's breakdown of the election coverage. They go back and forth into the counties a lot. And we started seeing in the very historically liberal leaning counties, we started seeing the margins very, very close with how the turnout was. When they compared it to Biden, it showed that Kamala was actually underperforming in many of the liberal centric places in Georgia.
She underperformed everywhere around the country. Yeah.
Well, I think that set the tone of what I felt the American voters were feeling, right? So what that tells me is, number one, Trump obviously got his base. Trump was great. We always knew Trump was going to be great in the outer parts of, every state. But when it came to the big cities, right, people that tend to lean liberal, the percentages of people that voted and kind of flipped to Republican, according to the percentages, were crazy. And I think it really goes to show that, look, what we saw the Democratic Party putting out the past 4 years, and even prior to that, goes to show, man, the people don't want that.
Well, let me ask you guys something. Now that Kamala can finally be unburdened by what has been, what do you think she did wrong with her campaign?
I don't think it's just Kamala. I think it's what the Democratic Party did wrong, which was offer us no other option. They waited until basically, Biden was no longer at all a viable option, and then they just forced Kamala upon us rather than starting at the DNC, which they still had time to do, provide a new candidate, and everyone just threw their support behind Kamala. And to be fair, I didn't like her at all. I wasn't rearing for her to win as the first woman president because I don't agree with her policies. She didn't run a good campaign from the get. She didn't have the opportunity for the last however long to run a campaign. And she was just incredibly complacent because the Democratic Party just threw their support behind her.
I personally think that the Democratic Party just did not listen to, the people and just use common sense. One of the biggest things I don't think they have come to term with is the American populace is actually getting really smart at spotting when, number one, you're part of the political machine. Number two, how biased media outlets are, which, this concept of fake news that Trump generated back in 2016, it's become a thing where people are starting to be like, holy shit, he's not wrong per se. The media, and the reason I say that is because look at what happened to Bernie. We witnessed the Democratic Party push and prop up these puppets that are useless, right? That no one wanted Hillary, they wanted Bernie, but they got Hillary. No one wanted Biden per se, they wanted Bernie, I think, again, but we still got Biden. And no one wanted Kamala. It's the same thing, right? So I think what really happened last night is we had, number one, someone, I agree with Farah, someone that no one wanted. More importantly, we had someone that was just part of the political machine. And the reason I say that, and this goes down to what I saw last night on national TV, on CNN. There was a video that I watched of her. She was taking a phone call and she was like, oh, I'm so glad you voted for me. And then she ha, ha, ha. And then you see her turn her phone. And I thought it was bullshit. I thought it was made up. You literally see the camera, dude. You see it in the camera mode. And I was like, this is like the Nelly video where Kelly Rowland is texting on the Excel
spreadsheet. Yeah.
This doesn't make sense. That's how I felt.
I agree with you both. I think you both brought up excellent points. I mean, from my perspective, it's a few things. I think people view the Democratic Party as the quote unquote party of intellects. And that's the perception. But the reality is they're coming across as very condescending because they're essentially telling you what to vote for. And you brought up a great point with the machine. Hillary took 2016 for granted. Say what you will about Biden. Biden is a lifelong politician, and he ran an excellent campaign in 2020 because his entire campaign was ran on uniting the country and combating some very divisive policies under Trump, whether you agree with them or not. And he was pretty consistent in the messaging. With Kamala, she ran into the same issue as Hillary, which is inconsistent messaging and the pandering. I don't need somebody to pander to me. I need somebody to tell me exactly what you're going to do for the country at large. And Mike and I were talking about it earlier. When you have Trump being endorsed by people like Elon, people like Robert F. Kennedy, who I was very high on, and Tulsi Gabbard, it makes you think. Now, regardless of whether you agree with their policies and where their stances are, these are people that are endorsing him based off of coming from the liberal side. I could give two shits about Cardi B or J-Lo or Bad Bunny endorsing Kamala Harris. It made no sense. They're not going to make waves with the average voter. So,
well, it was like this, and that's what I say. It's the stupid machine, man. Look, Oprah getting up there. Oprah with all her wealth. Oh, you need to vote for Kamala.
Beyonce and Donald Trump's like, dance party with Beyonce.
J-Lo, she's crying. I didn't even watch this because I like literally think celebrities they're the most. If we haven't seen what's going on in Hollywood, they're all pedophiles and they're all creeps. But here's the thing. Literally, they bring nothing to the economy. We prop them up, right? And they're telling us who to vote for. At least look, if you go endorsement to endorsement, we get J-Lo, which is P. Diddy's ex. I know damn well she knew what the hell this guy was into.
Yeah.
Right? Like, think of that right there versus Elon Musk. This motherfucker can automate, like, he can launch a rocket and then land the same rocket and then reuse it and launch another one. You know what I'm saying? So like now, who brings more to the table? If I'm judging your endorsements as a person, am I going to judge Jenny from the block and say she has a nice ass, right? Or am I going to say, look, Elon Musk just has a company that, number one, employs hundreds of thousands of people, and number two, is making technological advancements in the world, providing infrastructure to people that didn't have infrastructure. Am I going to like take what he says or take what she says? You know, if I'm judging endorsement against endorsement, my money goes on Musk because he's a smart guy, dude.
And, you know, there's something to be said about, and we've talked about it prior, with big money in politics. So whether that's Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, like these people pumping, these multi-billionaires pumping hundreds of millions of dollars like into these campaigns. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Somebody like Elon, who is very liberal leaning, who has been very liberal leaning for a very long time. Somebody that has benefited from more liberal leaning candidates because he runs Tesla, right? You know, Tesla's an electric car company. He's gotten billions of dollars in subsidies for SpaceX. So for him to kind of come over and support Trump, it does make the larger population think. So.
And they're just empty endorsements. The celebrity endorsements, just like you're saying, they don't provide anything. And it just shows the desperation of the Democratic Party to just be, to stay relevant, to still get the young and the youth vote, which is like, for example, one of the biggest issues that, you know, both parties kind of aligned on. You know, I'm a huge supporter of Palestine. One of the biggest issues is the war and the genocide in Gaza. And both parties are very pro-Israel, almost competing with each other to see what's pro-Israel. And in that way, I feel like the Democratic Party was incredibly tone deaf in seeing what their supporters wanted, which was a stance and a ceasefire and an end on that genocide. But, you know, she started pandering in an act of desperation. She started saying like, oh, you know what, and this was maybe just the day before or 2 days before, she said, I'm going to end the war in Gaza, right? And in one of the biggest Arab American states in the U.S., in Michigan, she pulled 15%.
Yeah.
And Independent got 33% while Trump got 47%. So it's not even about, okay, what she's doing wrong that, you know, Trump gained supporters. The Democratic Party lost their support. It wasn't even necessary that the Republicans gained.
And by all accounts, if you look at the Trump administration and what they've done in Israel, that's a very interesting statistic, because with the Trump administration, Trump is very pro-Israel, right? With Netanyahu, he's very pro-IDF. So the fact that Palestinians or Arab people were voting more for Trump just based off of like his prior stances show you what a candidate they thought Kamala was.
Most of them voted actually independent because they were just not for either party, but it did skew things because they saw how Biden and how Harris chose to run so far, which was be incredibly pro-Israel and allow the arms to continue to go on through there.
At the end of the day, I think what happened last night, it showed that Democrats in America, we want something a little bit more genuine. We want something a little bit more, a little bit more straightforward with us, like realistically. And this is just me being full candor, right? We all know Trump. Is he the most like respectful person? No. Does he make fun of people? Yes. Does he bully people? Yes. Is he, do some people consider him a piece of shit? Yes. Is he a womanizer? Yes. Whatever your opinions
Where are you going with this?
Whatever you think, at least you're making those opinions. And he says, yeah, I did that. When he said that, grab him by the comment, right? Literally, he was like, yeah, I said that it is what it is. I'd much rather what the thing that really pisses me off, I would have way more respect for someone like Kamala Harris or I have more respect for politicians that acknowledge their past and say how it's going to change. For instance, there was a little video floating around where, Kamala's like, he's saying that, I'm going to force you to drive an EV and this, that, and the other. And I'm telling you, I don't want to make you drive electric cars. Fast forward or rewind back to a few years or months ago where there's literally a video where she's like, under my administration, everyone's going to have EVs. There's no more gas cars. And I'm like, that's the type of shit that pisses me off. Or even worse, you go way more back and you look at her policy when it came to drugs. When she was prosecuting people for drug crimes, guess what? Those people are in jail. They got criminal records. Their lives are ruined.
Yeah.
But what does she say? Yeah, I smoked weed. And I think she said that. I believe I saw a video where she indicates, yes, she is inhaled. You know what I'm saying? And that's the type of, how do you acknowledge the fact that you're a walking contradiction and you're not even willing to accept your past issues? Look, the way she came into her position is questionable. I believe like there was an affair, or some sort of sleeping with her boss type situation. Open up about that. I want to know about that. And why she lost a lot of votes, in my opinion. It was because she was not willing to take that risk to be genuine. The risk that people like Trump did and JD Vance did. They went on Rogan. They went on Theo Vaughn. In my opinion, when I saw Trump go on Rogan and when I saw Trump going on Theo Vaughn and I saw how they interacted with him and I saw the genuineness of their conversation, it helped solidify him to me as a viable candidate. Same thing with JD Vance, because at the end of the day, he actually had some substance to himself. He wasn't speaking a script. Whereas I'm seeing Kamala scripted town halls, scripted, door knocks, scripted everything.
And everyone's saying don't fall for it. All the liberals on our side are just like, you can see how she shifts from side to side, just like, that last minute plea. And no one's going to fall for it. And you're making the constituents look like they're dumb versus, Trump might be saying outlandish things, which I don't agree with, but at least he's saying what the people are thinking and he's not changing his mind on it.
He kept his base motivated.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's key now that if you're on the Democratic side, you can't trust the polls, because there are a lot of people like Farah, Mike, myself. We do pay attention to politics. We're not in it all the time, but I'm not vocal about where I stand, right? Like, I'm not constantly putting myself out there about what I feel about each of these candidates on social media, right? You have people that are always vocal, always saying, what's on their mind, and a vast majority of people don't do that. And those are the people that were voting for Trump in droves. Mike touched upon Trump being genuine. I don't think it's, genuine is an interesting word, because I don't think any politician is truly genuine. I think they're all pandering in some shape or form. Oh, yeah. The one thing I'll say about Trump,
unfiltered,
unfiltered, and and not only unfiltered, but he put himself in the line of fire, figuratively and literally, right?
Dude.
So he's been on every interview, regardless of whether it's been friendly and combative. And Harris was just running such a controlled campaign. Everything was scripted, like you said. I never knew where she stood on certain issues. It was always like these postcard anecdotes, by being unburdened by what has been. What was another one? Oh, I'm going to create an opportunity-based economy. All of like these little seances. And I was just like, man, like, I don't know where you stand. But funny enough, that was what Hillary ran into as well. Mm-hmm. Hillary pandered a lot. So, and I feel like they take the voter base for granted.
Complacency. Earn our votes.
And it sucks too. And this is the last thing I'll say about it, is that, look, America is very, very open to having a female president.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people on the left are going to say, she had that going against her. There's the racism, there's this, there's that. Listen, I'm voting on the strength of the candidate. When she ran in 2020, she was not a good candidate. She got her campaign got ruined by Tulsi Gabbard.
4%.
Yeah, she was polling at 4%. No one wanted her to begin with. So to kind of thrust her upon us, and look, Biden, there's some sort of loyalty there. She was his vice presidential pick, and I understand, why they maybe thought that was the decision. No, hold a primary. Mm-hmm. That's the only way to have people be passionate about voting. So,
to go back to the genuineness of people in general. I mean, we watched the Theo Von interview with Big X the Plug, right? And
Big X the Plug.
We learned a ton about him. And I honestly thought, like, after hearing about him as a person on Theo Von's podcast, I actually started listening to his music more than I had previously listened to. And dude, his music's, when you know the backstory about some, it actually is pretty cool. Right. And it makes you connect with people more.
The word relatability.
Yeah.
Relatability. Yeah.
So look, I mean, there's another topic I want to move on to, though. And I think, this is just as serious as the election. And I don't give a shit what anyone says. But like, I'm willing to January 6th because of this.
Play the clip.
Fury is growing over Peanut the Squirrel's death after America's most popular critter was seized from his owners.
Now the government of New York is being called out for seizing pet squirrels and murdering them.
I spoke with Peanut's heartbroken owners, Mark and Daniela Longo.
You took my animals and my family and you left my house and you killed them.
R.I.P. my king, the prince, Peanut the Squirrel, and Fred the Raccoon. They are with Harambe right now. And,
rest in peace, Harambe.
And I know, y'all, you guys think I'm crazy, that I'm this passionate about a squirrel and a raccoon being euthanized. But let me tell you why.
Why? What
they did to Peanut and Fred is a violation of the U.S. Constitution. How? And some lady reported them. So the couple that owned this squirrel and this raccoon, they were like saving them, right? Peanut's mom left him or died or something, and the guy picked him up. It was two OnlyFans creators that picked up this baby squirrel and they raised him, right? The squirrel was a celebrity online. And I don't know much about the raccoon, but basically what they did is some random chick that says was supposedly a nature photographer or conservationist reported them to the authorities in New York. I think it was New York State sent 10 people to go. It was like a SWAT raid to go and get this squirrel. And in the SWAT raid, my boy Peanut did not go down without a fight. He bit out of him. Good for them. Number one, disrespected his home and his name. But number two, they took his boy Fred. So they bit him. And what ended up happening? They euthanized both of them.
Let me just say, what an incredible usage of city resources to send 10 people to collect 2 small animals.
Yeah,
Dude.
the rats, just let the rats run rampant, but
Yeah.
the squirrel.
Yeah, but the squirrel.
The f***ing rats are taking slices of pizza up the god subway station. Play that clip, Josh. Rats, that's where your problem is, not squirrels.
Yeah.
And maybe it was because he was a darker squirrel.
Oh my God. It was a brown squirrel.
I think that might have had something to do with it.
The reason I get so pissed off about this, yes, it's a squirrel, it's a raccoon. But the reason it really irritates me, and it's one of the reasons why I like practicing law, is because the government should not be allowed to go into your private property. If you got a squirrel that's not bothering anyone, listen, I'll assume that risk. In Florida, you're allowed to own, wild animals. You got to get certain licenses, shit like that. Look, if the guy needs a license to have the squirrel, let him have the squirrel. Let him go get his license to have the squirrel. Mm-hmm. Don't kill his goddamn squirrel and say that you have to test it for rabies after it was protecting itself. You know what I'm saying? Let him get his squirrel. But if the squirrel or the raccoon bites someone, hold him liable for the damages. Let the law do that. Let that happen. But don't go kill the squirrel and the raccoon for no reason. Squirrel and raccoon were doing nothing. They were making more money than the people that God killed them.
But it is crazy that government overreach happens when it's convenient for them, right? So here they are sending all of these people to collect this squirrel, but crime is running rampant, on the streets. People aren't being prosecuted for petty theft, and the cities themselves are falling apart. But they're going to take a lot of their time.
10 people, dude.
Yeah, they're going to take all this time, all of these resources to take someone's small animal that's not doing harm to anyone. So
the fact that they even took this matter seriously enough when it was reported for 10 people to show up, what kind of obviously I can only imagine that the complaint was from a white woman or something. It
was, and as soon as the internet did not let this go down easily. They found out who she was that reported it, and literally she shut off all her socials, everything.
What did she think was going to happen?
People like that deserve to have their lives ruined. I'm sorry. I don't have any sort of remorse, for them. And again, it's you being a Karen. Mm-hmm. Nothing against all of the wonderful Karens out there, but that's the term that we like to use now. But these people, they just they think that, let me just call the cops, let me call the police because I feel uncomfortable. No.
Listen, man, I love animals. I think I think animals are amazing creatures. I think they are they're definitely different people are attracted to different animals. Right. So we got people that have Wally the alligator, right? That's a service alligator. I think some guy in Florida. Yeah. But that's my point. One of my favorite content creators, Two-Turn Tony with his ducks.
Yeah.
Dude, these animals bring a little bit of joy to people's lives, man. What the, let them have it. As long as they're not hurting anybody. I know people that have vicious and violent dogs that should be taken away, or it's not even the animal's fault 90% of the time, it's the owner's fault. Go after people like that. But if you got a damn little squirrel, a duck, an alligator, I'm a little dicey on, but
it's Florida.
it's Florida. It's acceptable. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Farah, we talked about Mobijohn in a previous episode. That was another animal that went viral. When you see stories like this with these animals that kind of break through the public consciousness, why do you think it resonates with people as much as it does?
I mean, well, first of all, because they're cute. And then, there was also even I remember there was a viral video with a panda in China because it sneezed and everyone just loved it. And I think people just like to see wholesome material sometimes from animals. Like it's their escape. Sometimes people watch videos of like kittens and puppies and stuff like that too.
Well, it's also the fact that, I remember there was I think it was Marley and Me. There was a part where he was like, I don't know if that was it or somewhere I read it, but
dude, I remember bringing a girl to go see Marley and Me on a first date, and what a
Did she
horrible
cry?
idea!
Did she cry?
Yeah, not a great first date.
Dude,
Bringing a girl to go see Marley and Me.
the concept of an animal, like especially if you raise it from when it's a baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
They know you from the moment they are born. Like you're their best friend until the day of their death. You know what I'm saying? And like they know you their whole life and you'll only know them for a fraction of their life. Like that shit kind of hits a little hard. You know what I'm saying? So like that's why I think animals are definitely important for people. And in Florida, a lot of people don't know this. Like if you like say I've handled cases where a vet will kill or unintentionally kill an animal. We can't really sue for pain and suffering because in Florida, animals are viewed as property. So you can really you can't really go after the pain and suffering concept or some of the case law I've seen. Maybe you can, maybe it's changing. But more importantly, I tell people like it sucks. The law doesn't see these animals for what they do for you as a person.
Except I've set up pet trusts. I had a client who disowned her children and set up a pet trust for a parrot.
Yeah?
So, people love their animals, their companions. Sometimes they provide better companionship than other people.
I feel like it's the innocence as well, because you see like these cute little animals and they almost remind you of like a baby. But there's also like a sense of cognitive dissonance where dogs, like puppies, kittens, Fred the raccoon, the squirrel, like they're so cute, like, and there's so much attention put on them. But then there's also like the mass farm aspect of, look, we eat a lot of meat, we eat a lot of chicken, cows, bacon, pigs.
So you're saying it's subjective.
Right. So I feel like it's very, very subjective, and I always find it like very, very interesting. You see a cute little piglet, and like, oh my God, he's so adorable, but I'm gonna have bacon.
So this brings up a memory, but I will never forget
The goat.
Yes, the goat.
So I have my own goat story, which I'll tell
as a
after.
kid. Look, West Guyanese, we eat curry goat. I love curry goat. Think it's one of the best meals ever, right? So my dad, we go to a goat farm or a place where it has goat. He's like, oh, go pick out a goat. I'm like, all right, yeah, cool. So I don't know. I'm like 6 years old. Yeah, Dad, this is the one. I didn't know I was choosing that guy's death. You know what I'm saying? My dad's like, okay, yeah, we'll take that one. And then the guy, I'll never forget this. The guy literally just pulls out a gun and puts it to the goat's head and shoots it. I'm like, oh my God. And I just saw the goat die and I was just like traumatized.
They shot it?
They
didn't
shot him
even
in the
like
head.
butcher. Oh my.
Oh yeah, no, this one, he straight up like pulled one from his waistband and pop. And I was just like,
Where
holy
was this?
shit, this went from 0 to 1,000,000 in Kissimmee.
I remember as a kid, my uncle had a wedding in Guyana, and I had to be maybe 10 or 11 years old at the time. And like you, they love your dad exposing you to the goat. We West Indians, we love goat curry. I love goat curry. But I'll never forget there being a small herd of goats. It was about 10 or 12 goats, and they were in the backyard, and I was playing with them, and I thought that they were so adorable. My uncle had a few people there helping out, and we went to leave into town, and then when I came back, all of the goats were fucking slaughtered. They were hanging upside down. My favorite goat, actually, they saved for last because they wanted me to see him. Oh my! And he was hung upside down with his throat slit, bleeding out. And I see them skinning these goats, and I'm just like crying my eyes out. It was basically the most traumatic experience I've ever had. I've carried it for a while because they were all like, you see all these chickens running around. They pop the chicken's head off, and then they're laughing. I see like this headless chicken running around, and I am like, holy.
Made you want to come back to America, right?
I was like, where is America when I need it? Even at 10 years old.
Do you have any goat stories, Farah?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of those types of situations in Pakistan as well, because Pakistanis also love to eat goat, So we have a religious holiday that's literally like surrounded around killing goats. It's one of our religious holidays. And, for after Ramadan, like 30 days of not eating, you're petting the goats, like, having fun, blah, blah, blah. And then even after Ramadan, like there's like 12 days later, there's another holiday. And, there's just a bunch of goats that you think are your new pets. And that's not the case. I remember just running around outside in one of my cousin's backyard, and they had all the goats there for like a month, like a good month. We were petting them, we were raising them, and then we just went inside to get dressed for the holiday, and then they were like, "Okay, no one come outside now." And I was like, "Why? What's going on?" And then I literally peeked, and I just see pool of blood coming out of, because like the Islamic way to slaughter it, they like cut the throat, and they have to let it bleed out. That's like the Islamic way of cutting it, because they sever an artery or something so that it dies quicker and it doesn't realize what's going on. And all I'm seeing is them holding the goat's thing and like his body like flailing and struggling.
Dude, we need to go get therapy for this goat situation.
But we all still eat goat though. So
that's a good rest. You just inspired me with a new restaurant name, Pets to Plate.
You just inspired me with a new podcast, Only Goats.
Only Goats. Only Goats.
Everyone talks about their toxic goat horror story.
Yeah, we can start Goats Anonymous, where we like literally just come and talk about our traumatic goat experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like yesterday.
Poor goat.
Poor goats. Well, last thing I want to talk about, and you guys can give me your thoughts on, because I actually wasn't aware of that with Florida amendments or Florida laws that have to be passed. So women's rights are a huge deal on ballots across the U.S. And I didn't realize that Florida is one of the select few states, I guess, or maybe like the only state that requires a 60% vote in order for something to pass into law. So with the last numbers that I saw before I went to sleep, I think for Proposition 4 or Amendment 4, which is giving women the right to choose, it was at 57%. Mm-hmm. So, Farah, I'll let you get started. What do you think that means for women, criminalization, and why do you think it didn't pass the threshold needed?
Well, first of all, it still shows that a majority of people in Florida voted for this. So it's not like they didn't have the support. It just didn't hit the 60% threshold. And, it's really sad because most of the time, as of right now, it's almost nearly a complete ban, which is 6 weeks, when most women don't even know they're pregnant at that point, because it's calculated from the date of your last period until you find out. And most of the time that doesn't show up until the 5th or 6th week. So a lot of these women are going to have to travel elsewhere or do something to get that, to get that healthcare. And there's not a lot of exceptions, including for people even who have ectopic pregnancies, because sometimes you don't find out until much later. Or if you have If the child is passed, they're still required to carry it to term, and they have to give birth to a stillborn child. It's really, really sad. And, it just shows that more people need education on the amendments, because the issue before was that people didn't realize what exactly it was they were voting for when they increased the percentage to 60%.
Yeah. And I mean, I obviously, I as a guy, when it comes to abortion, like I try to stay out of that, because it's not something I feel like I have a real say in. It's something, that I think is primarily a topic for women, that I think they should kind of be in charge of what is going on in their body. Obviously, I just had a baby, look, I want my baby, but at the end of the day, if my wife's health was at risk, or if there was situations, like I want them to be able to, preserve their life as well, if it came down to that. So, I mean, it's definitely a tough topic, but I think the bigger picture here is why did it not pass the 60% threshold? A few years ago, and I can't remember which election it was, but I believe it was passed. I remember voting on the topic, and it was changed the threshold to 60%. And some people justified it to say, look, it protects the Florida Constitution a little bit more. But yeah, and yes, it does. It's harder to take things away that are granted to you as a constitutional right in Florida. For instance, the Sunshine Law, where, there's transparency in government, right? Let's say 50% of the people wanted to say, no, we just want the government to be able to do what they want in Florida. We want to get rid of the Sunshine Law. At least that 60% threshold gives us that little cushion where, we have a little bit of protection. But in this scenario, it goes to show, look, I think a majority of the state, Florida is purple. A majority of the state agrees with, allowing women to have some sort of right of regarding abortion. Same thing with marijuana. A majority of the state does agree with marijuana use, but you have to get that 60% threshold, and it's because people allowed that to be voted in. So it's like that threshold, there's goods, there's bads, one way or the other. Look, at the end of the day, people need to understand you can always put it on the ballot. You can always put initiatives out there to be voted on. These are why there's other routes that you can take. Push your legislators, push your representatives to do the things you want, because you want to know what impacts us the most on election day. It's not the president. It's our state and local representatives. It's our constitutional amendments. Look, the right to fish and hunt got passed. Frankly, I don't know why they even made that up, but is it nice to have a right to fish and hunt there? Yes. Am I now going to think of lawsuits when someone tells me, or when you see the videos of the Karens saying you can't fish by my dock? Dude, I've already started thinking of ways that I can market to fishermen, people that I know that get harassed by people and say, oh, I'm going to file a constitutional claim against you for violating my right to fish and hunt. So it's crazy, but there are other ways to get these things done. You just got to take the initiative to do it. You don't only have to do it every election cycle. You can do it through voicing your vote, voicing your position to your representatives, and getting out there, getting groups of people. 57% of the fucking population of Florida wants something. Get together, do something about it.
The most important thing is we can't give up.
Yeah.
That's really, really great advice. And what I'll end it with is that I would actually like to pull up the statistic and put it on screen of when they passed that law a few years ago, the 60% law. Did it pass with 60%?
No, it only passed with about 50-something%.
See, so I find that very interesting that that's what they required. But and you look at the state of the country, 60% is a very, very high threshold, because the country is so divided. Even with Trump winning by a quote unquote landslide, him winning by a landslide is him winning by 3 points, 2 or 3 points. So I think that's pretty interesting, and that means you as a voter pay attention to what's on the ballot, because I think so many people put their eggs in the basket of who's president, But although the president is in charge of like national policy, it's really like state and local municipalities that are affecting your day-to-day more so. Yeah. But guys, what a great conversation today. If the outcome wasn't what you wanted, you'll have another chance in the next 4 years.
This was fun.
It was fun. So thanks for tuning in. And if you have a comment or suggestion, leave it below. And until next time.